We had another preacher and his family show up in the late fall 'cause the Methodist preacher we had was fair old and went off down to Springfield or someplace to live out his days with his daughter and her family. Deer Run was growing quite a bit, and the new preacher wanted to expand the church house to get enough room for a new Sunday school for the children. That put me back in the carpenter business for a little while. Arliss Hyatt come down with the shingles in December, and the doc had to fuss over him quite a bit. We was some concerned about his condition and all, and rightly so, I guess. The doc had quite a time with him. Arliss got to where he was plumb wore down from it, broke out all over his back and ribs like he was, and not being able to get rest nor sleep. It was terrible painful for him and awful hard to get relief from. But he was as tough as mule belly leather and managed to pull through. By the time the early February come around, Arliss come around too and seemed to not be overburdened with it after a spell. Marion Daniels showed up now and then and even stayed at our place a couple of weeks in early March. He got offered a job in administration with the Marshals service so he could quit the trail, and the notion that he might get himself involved in politics come up again. He turned it all down, saying he was a marshal, not a damn pencil pusher or politician, and didn't want to make his living breaking promises and such. He did spend a little time as a mail carrier, though, bringing a letter to Miss Harmony from Homer Poteet's wife, Miss Susie, after he stayed up around Dunston with them for a few days. Deer Run was on the boom. I spec they was near a couple of hundred new folk calling at home by the middle of spring. We had a new notion shop on the east edge of town, a sawmill just east of that, a half a mile or so. A couple dozen families or more took up land just outside the city limits, and the town fathers expanded Deer Run's borders some to take 'em into the community. That helped increase the tax income to the town, and I got back into the carpenter business again, kindly overseeing putting up another schoolhouse so there'd be enough room for all the kids. Another blacksmith come to Deer Run, too, and Verlin was some glad for it. He was pretty busy expanding his livery business and couldn't keep up with all the blacksmithing that the town needed. The railroad never did get no spur laid out our way like they said they wanted to, but a pair of brothers by the name of Kinney that had a freight service over by Jeff City put Deer Run on their regular route and was right dependable. They needed some place to keep a couple extra teams of horses and a freight wagon out our way, and I helped Verlin and some fellers he hired put up another stable and fence in 5 or 6 more acres for some new pasture. Little Bill and me come to get right close. He was about 5.5 years old that spring and figured he was pretty much all growed up and ready to do whatever his daddy done. Arliss the mule come to follering him around the place like he done with me in years afore. Bill was that mule's main interest, and the two of 'em was real pards. Now and then I'd see 'em out under the big oak tree down by the forge, Bill setting on the ground and jabbering away about something or another, while old Arliss would stand there listening to what Bill had to say and switching his tail. Early spring, me and Miss Harmony got to talking it over and decided it might be good for Bill and me to take to the trail some. Verlin agreed with us and went to work making Arliss a hackamore so Bill could get some control over him without having to put no bit in the mule's mouth. I went down to Elmo's place and got old Bill a little slicker of his own, and Harmony sewed up a ground cloth and bedroll just his size. Bill didn't know nothing about it till the middle of April that spring when we give him the slicker, roll, and that hackamore in a box with his name on it. I was afeard that boy was going to explode when he seen all that stuff made up just for him and Arliss the mule. After he settled down some, I took him outside to try that hackamore out. I warn't terrible sure how old Arliss might take to the boy actually having some real control over him, but that little mule never seemed to give it one thought. He answered them reins like he'd done it all his life. I managed to convince Bill that they warn't no need to be heavy-handed no more, like when he was just using a halter, and he backed right off and come to be real easy with them reins. After just a week or two, he'd put on his hat and boots, get down to the livery, saddle that little mule, and put on the hackamore and get to trotting around the place like he knowed what he was doing.